Books and writing books have been a big part of my life for many years, and so you need to know that I care about writing, and I care about books. I particularly care about quality. I care about how the publishing world is evolving and the fact that amateur publishing can be a problem. Before you send that manuscript out to a publisher, or you hit publish on the self-publishing platform you probably don't know enough about, I think you owe it to yourself to pay attention. So what do you really know about publishing? Probably nothing. Or at least probably nothing much that reflects the reality of the publishing world, as real writers know about it. Here's the thing though, if you want to be a writer and you want to publish a book, you'll need to learn more than a thing or two about publishing. Let's look at some of the things I think you should know about at the outset. You know as well as I do, there's been nothing short of a seismic change in the publishing world over the last couple of decades. In fact, there's also been a seismic change in the reading world, which is important to writers. What people read, how they read, and how much they read, how they decide what to read, all of these things have changed in tandem with the changes in the publishing industry. The changes in the publishing industry these days mean that there are more books published than ever before by more individual writers. So readers have a lot more choice. It also means that publishers have lots more competition when it comes to selling their products. And given the number of people who seem to be writing a book these days, writers also have more competition when it comes to selling their books to publishers. So I want to talk about the traditional path to publishing your book, selling it to a traditional publisher. When I started writing books more than 30 years ago, there were really only two avenues to publication. Either I would land a book contract from a publisher, or I would vanity publish. That's the dark underbelly of book publication. I'm going to talk more about that in the next episode on self-publishing. If I think about my own experience, I landed my first contract with a smallish publisher, which has been defunct now for some years, it happens, with a non-fiction book on the ethics and politics of the organ transplant industry. And I followed all the steps to non-fiction publishing that were expected at the time. I contacted a publisher whose list included non-fiction, health-related books after researching publishers. And remember, there was no internet back then. This step is much more efficient in the 21st century. Next, once I had an interested publisher, I developed a complete book proposal. There'll be a video on this step in the future. I sent the proposal to the publisher, who then asked to see the manuscript. Since this was my first book, I had to write the entire book before they would consider it. Later on in my career, I was able to sign a contract for publication at this stage, based on proposal only. I then finished the book and submitted it, and I waited for them to accept or reject. I was lucky in this occasion. They accepted it. Now, this query, submission, rejection process on the road to traditional publishing contract has actually changed very little in the past 3 decades. It's a bit of a merry-go-round that seems impossible to get off, but that's how it's done. So given the fact that it's such a hassle to entice a publisher to take on your project, and the fact that self-publishing seems like an easier approach, why would you even try? Well, here's why. First, traditional publishers actually pay for all of the editing and publication costs. They have a team of professionals. Professional editing and design can be expensive, and they do this for their books. Next, traditional publishers actually have a greater reach. They can get your books into bookstores and libraries. You can do this on your own, but it's much more difficult. They can get you to literary festivals and in front of audiences for book signings. This is almost impossible for self-published writers. Traditional publishing means that you can focus on writing, not publishing. This is important. Your time can be spent on creating the next book rather than on editing and cover design, which are probably not among your fortes. Next, whether you like it or not, traditional publishers offer at least a veneer of respectability. There is still some prestige associated with publishing with a traditional publisher, whether that publisher is large or small. There is still a whiff of sleaziness about self-publishing in some circles. But there are things you need to know about the relationship between authors and publishers. And let's start by looking at something you've probably never been considering: what publishers dislike about authors. Well, first, authors often fail to follow the guidelines set out for them. You'll see, for example, online that a publisher expects a specific item to be included in a book proposal, and then you ignore it. They actually hate that, and they might reject you on that basis. So if they ask for something in particular in terms of how a manuscript should be formatted, you do it. Publishers really hate it when authors send nasty replies to rejections. I've never been able to understand why writers do this. I'm not sure what an author thinks he or she will gain by doing it, but as far as I'm concerned, the only possible outcome for this is for that author can kiss that publisher goodbye for future projects. Now, whether you like it or not, it's the publisher's job to make decisions about what project they'll accept and which ones they'll pass on. It's part of the game. Get over it. Publishers also think authors are pretty flaky and self-obsessed. You know what I mean. Flaky people are known as procrastinators, as unreliable when it comes to things like deadlines. They're known as generally more moved by their artistry than the business aspects of writing or publishing. Self-obsessed people think they are the center of the universe. Publishers don't like that. Publishers also think that authors are far too finicky about their work. Publishers have a team of experts at their disposal, which the writer has at his or her disposal at that point. They have editors, designers, and the like. And yet, the author will often ignore their advice. When it comes to what you submit to a publisher, here are some of the things to avoid. A manuscript over 200,000 words or under 50,000, unless specifically told that this is okay in specific genres. For example, a children's book might be far less than 50,000 words. You never submit a first draft of anything. Geez, only send your best, well-edited work. As Ernest Hemingway once said, the first draft of anything is shit. Don't send anything in it poorly punctuated. Avoid sending anything that shows a lack of command of grammar and syntax, and don't send stuff that's offensive or libelous. To write is human, to edit is divine, or so said Stephen King. So what does a publisher want from an author? Here are some of the things that I think publishers want. A well-written manuscript based on a great idea. A typo-free manuscript, or as typo-free as is humanly possible. They're looking for a distinctive voice. Something that's not the same as everybody else's. Something that's not derivative. They're looking for a sense of who would buy your book. No matter what you think, the whole world will not buy your book. They're looking for a commitment to taking constructive criticism and following through with the editing. And they're also looking to a commitment to meeting deadlines. Best-selling author, the late Michael Crichton of Jurassic Park fame, once said, "Books aren't written, they're rewritten, including your own. It is one of the hardest things to accept, especially after the 7th rewrite hasn't quite done it." Okay, are publishers always right about what will sell? You and I both know they're not. There's a whole cottage industry online, it seems, to identify all those bestsellers that publishers initially rejected. The original Harry Potter book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, was rejected by 12 publishers before J.K. Rowling found one who would take it on. Twilight was rejected 14 times. Lord of the Flies, rejected 20 times. Stephen King's Carrie was rejected 30 times. Gone with the Wind, rejected 38 times. Still Alice, which of course you may have seen as a movie, was rejected 100 times, or at least she was ignored a few of those times. Lisa Genova, the author, later published it herself, after which a publisher took it on. And the list goes on. Publishers don't always get it right, but the authors persevered, and we're better for it. Subscribe to the Moonlight Press channel so you'll be able to see all of the rest of the videos.